It's Friday the 21st of July. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and I'm getting a lot of requests for information on two recent ditchings which were captured on video here in Northern California. So today we're going to talk about the recent ditching of the Beechcraft Bonanza at Shelter Cove, California in the Pacific Ocean, and also the ditching of the Piper PA28140 in Lake Tahoe. The new merch is in. Summer intern Kellen has set up the Blanco Lirio merchandise store, and we've got our new t-shirts and they look good. Look for them at the bottom of each video. How much are these t-shirts, Kellen?
$25 for this one. This one costs a bit more because it's got the two print zones.
And there's hats, mugs, everything you ever wanted on the Blanco Lirio merch store. And most importantly, because Kellen went to all the effort to set up the store, all the proceeds go directly to Kellen to benefit his aviation career. In both of these ditchings, everybody survived with minor injuries. This first video from Shelter Cove comes from Grant Prather Music. He's a talented jazz musician in the local area who happened to be there at the end of the Shelter Cove runway and got this excellent video of the ditching of the Bonanza. The Bonanza that ditched at Shelter Cove was November 9520 Yankee and was doing a pleasure flight from Lamson Airfield at Clear Lake on over to Shelter Cove. Shelter Cove is a real popular local destination as it's a cool place on the ocean to visit during our hot summer months here, and they've got food and drinks available right there off the end of the runway. Shelter Cove is located right here on the Pacific coast on the bluffs above the beach at an elevation of 73 feet, 3,400 foot long paved runway. And this aircraft, as we're watching the video, is making a right pattern for runway 12. According to witnesses, the engine began sputtering somewhere in the pattern on base and final, and by the time the aircraft got to its final approach, it sounds like the engine was completely out. So here all you can hear is wind noise, but the propeller is windmilling. Note the high angle of attack. And right about there, the aircraft stalls and impacts the water without flipping. From the Red-Headed Black Belt blog out of Shelter Cove, California, you can see both occupants are swimming away from the aircraft. They got out of the aircraft okay. The local fire department was able to respond and get the jet ski out. Apparently the female passenger was able to swim all the way to shore, and the pilot was picked up by the rescue jet ski. So thank you and support your local fire department. This is a very tiny community, and these folks were very lucky that these guys were there to help them, as this water at Shelter Cove is very cold and hypothermia was setting in. Now, as we watch this a little slower, check out the landing gear. Obviously, if you're doing a ditching and you've got a low-wing aircraft, the optimum ditching method is to ditch with the landing gear retracted. However, this engine failure happened very close in, and this pilot didn't have a lot of time to react to switch from a normal landing to a ditching or a water landing. But if you check this out closely, at first I thought this was just an optical illusion, but right there I begin to see what looks like the landing gear retracting. So it looks like the pilot decided, oh, we're going in, let's get the gear up. Just about the same time he gets the gear starting up, the aircraft aerodynamically stalls, the right wing stalls. The gear makes it about halfway up and then re-extends. It also looks like the pilot was able to slightly recover from this stall. He's pushing the nose down, hits the water and hits the water hard, but he does not flip the aircraft. Ideally, in a ditching with the low wings, again, you'd want to have the gear retracted. You want to have the flaps at a medium setting, not full flaps, but a medium setting. It's critical, as Sully taught us, former glider pilot, to keep the wings absolutely level during a water landing, and then add a few extra knots to your approach speed so that you can just flare just above the water and to try and get the smoothest landing possible. However, when you're ditching in the water, in both of these situations, well, we're not used to it, for one thing. There's no references as to the, for example, the side of a runway to help you judge your depth perception or how high you are off of the surface of the water. That's why it's often better to come in with a bit more airspeed and then feel your way down to the water, as it's very hard to judge exactly how high you are off of the water. It's easy to misjudge it too high and stall the aircraft in, or misjudge it too low and drive the aircraft into the water. Another consideration for a water ditching, besides getting the gear retracted, is consider unlatching the door. Get that door unlatched so that it doesn't get jammed up in the event, in the subsequent crash of the ditching, so that you can get out of the aircraft quickly. Why the engine failed in the first place, we don't know. Investigators will have to try and figure that out. A very common problem with Bonanzas is fuel mismanagement. I've owned a couple of these old Bonanzas. They do not have a very good ergonomic fuel management system. Old Bonanzas often have numerous tanks. I've owned a Bonanza with as many as 5 different fuel tanks, 1 valve, 2 fuel gauges, and 1 switch to manage all that. So it's very easy to mismanage the fuel in a Bonanza and cause an engine failure, even if you still have fuel remaining in one of the other tanks. But we don't know what happened here in this case. Very, very fortunate to get out of there. Another good reason to have shoulder harnesses in your vintage airplane. The next ditching that also happened early this month in July in Lake Tahoe is the PA28140 Cherokee, November 4586 Romeo. This occurred back on the 1st of July near Meeks Bay in Lake Tahoe. On July 1st, 2023, about 10:30 Pacific Daylight Time, a Piper PA28140 airplane, November 4586 Romeo, was substantially damaged when it was involved in an accident near Meeks Bay, California. The pilot was not injured and the passenger sustained serious injuries, and it was operated under FAR Part 91. The pilot reported that while approaching the Lake Tahoe area, he decided to fly around the lake before continuing to his intended destination. He added power to As he added power to level off, that doesn't make sense. As he added power to level off at an altitude of 9,500 feet, I think they mean as he reduced or set his cruise power setting, he heard a pop and felt something in the throttle as the engine RPM decreased to 1,800 RPM. Subsequently, the engine did not respond to throttle inputs, and the engine RPM continued to decrease near idle. The pilot advanced the mixture to full rich, switched fuel tanks. However, despite his attempts, he was unable to restore engine power. The pilot initiated a forced landing to the shoreline. However, he was unable to make it, and the airplane landed in the water about 1/4 mile from the shore and nosed over. Looking here at FlightAware, looks like the aircraft, the flight started out of Modesto. He flew north on up to Interstate 80, right past Blanco Lirio Global Headquarters, and then decided to take a lap around Lake Tahoe, climbing all the way up to about 9,400 or 9,500 feet when he started having engine trouble and ditched. The Cherokee 140 has a Lycoming 0320 engine, which is only about 150 horse engine, and it's a very hot day here in the Lake Tahoe area. Even though it's 10:30 in the morning, the elevation of Lake Tahoe at full pool, which it is full, is just over 6,000 foot elevation, about 6,200 feet. At 10:30 in the morning, even if the temperature was 70 degrees at standard pressure, 70 degrees, 6,000 feet, that gives you a density altitude approaching 8,000 feet. So the air was very thin that day for a Piper Cherokee 140 to be operating up in the High Sierra at that temperature and elevation. And that's going to play into this ditching. This ditching was captured on video as well, and we've got permission from the homeowner who filmed this video to play it here, and they wish to remain anonymous. And this is a steady rate of descent. I believe he's got partial power on the engine. Bam, until he hits that water, and immediately the Cherokee flips over. The Cherokee has fixed landing gear. He's unable to retract the landing gear even if he wanted to. And fortunately, boats responded very quickly to the area and rescued the two folks that were on board the airplane quickly before the aircraft sank. And it sank pretty quick after it ditched into the water. There was also a King Air Intel 1-2 orbiting overhead. Check out Vass's video. He captured the audio from that during this ditching. And Intel 1-2 is a Forest Service mapping ship that just happened to be in the area and was able to help ATC relay radio calls as this aircraft got below the altitude at which ATC could hear the pilot. So pretty glassy water this early in the morning, high density altitude. Even with partial power, he's coming down at a high rate of descent, but he did a great job of keeping his wings level and maintaining a good angle of attack all the way into the ditching. But again, with this glassy water, it's very hard to judge just how high you are off of the water. And in this case, he may have misjudged the flare, or because of the density altitude, he simply didn't have any energy left to perform the flare. Bam, and right into the water. Very sudden stoppage, and a chaotic, that's got to be just a terrifying evacuation of the aircraft, with the aircraft being upside down in the water and filling up. Again, if you can crack that door just loose prior to impact so that it doesn't jam up, so that you can quickly get out of the aircraft. And of course, military pilots get that training in the Dilbert Dunker, helicopter pilots as well, and it proves to you just how chaotic and confusing it is to try to get your way out of an aircraft that's upside down in the water. So good job by this crew, and again, they're very lucky. These two accidents happened right here in Northern California in my stomping grounds. I do a lot of flying up here in these mountains, doing high country reports, and often my best choice for a engine failure in the Husky is to consider landing on one of these lakes or near one of these, the shorelines of one of these lakes, as the terrain, surrounding terrain and timber is just too rough to safely put the airplane down. So these ditchings are a great example of what it's, real life example of what it's like to ditch your aircraft in these high mountain lakes. Thanks so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. Get your fresh, new, hot merch off of the merch page seen down below, and help support Kellen on his aviation career path. Thank you for your support. See you here.